So, welcome back to the fifth module of this course on managing change in organization. And as you remember, in the first lecture of this module, we have been talking about vision and mission and then how it could be linked with the change. Now, as we have discussed earlier also that vision basically talks about where we are and where we need to go in the future, and mission basically talks about the reason for existence of an organization, what it does in terms of product, market, customers, and how they are going to realize that vision. Now, in continuation of this, we are going to see that how it could be linked with the change, because when we are talking about the change, change is also related to the future, and any change effort actually is supposed to be aligned with the vision and mission of the organization. So, any change effort is supposed to support the management to realize the vision of an organization, and that is why we are going to discuss that how vision and mission can be linked with the change. So, to start with, as we have already discussed that you need to have a vision which is going to be more strategic, which is going to provide you a direction, which appears to be meaningful, so that it is able to provide a sense of commitment towards the change among the employees of the organization. Now, if you look at a vision statement of any organization, and if you want it to be meaningful, then it must be able to relate itself with what people want to do and what people need, and whether people are able to relate themselves with the vision of the organization or not. So, we will discuss certain points related to this, that is vision as stories. Now, when we say that vision is stories, what does it mean? It does not mean that you are going to narrate a story to talk about the vision, right. So, here what we are going to talk about is that vision provides you a description of the change which you can relate with. Now, when you are going to provide a description, it takes the form of a stories, right, and that is why we are calling it as a story. Say simply put it, when you are going to talk about stories, it becomes more effective than simply a vision statement. So, if you relate vision with a description that okay, this is where we are and this is what you want to be. So, if it and it takes a form of stories, then people start imagining themselves and their actions which lead to a future or a desired end state which you are looking forward to as a change manager. Now, the second point is that yes, vision must be related with the mission and goals of the organizations, right. So, let us not get confused with vision and mission statements together, because vision is basically able to help you to provide a direction from where you are to where you need to go. And if you remember, I gave you a lot of examples yesterday of various companies that how they develop their vision and mission statements. Related to this, we need to ensure that your vision statement follows the mission, right. So, the moment you say that this is your vision, then you should ensure that your mission is also aligned with the vision, and at the next stage you have goals and objectives. From the mission you derive your goals and objectives, or what you call your strategies in order to realize your goals and objectives. So, at the first stage you have vision statement, right, which provides a picture of the future, okay, which is going to be actually more inspirational in nature, because that motivates people to go to that particular state. Then when you are talking about the mission statements, mission statement has a purpose in the sense that it talks about the existence of the organization, that why an organization exists, what is the reason for that existence, and how it is going to reach to that future, right. So, that is why we call it being instrumental. Through this mission statement, you will be able to realize the vision of the organization. Say for example, if I say that okay, the vision statement of IIT Kharagpur states okay, that we want to be in the top 100 institutions of the world, right. Now, the basis of this vision statement has been derived based on certain activities which could be taken as a form of mission. So, the mission statement would include the instruments or the activities through which you will be able to realize this goal, right, through publications, in terms of research, innovations, patents, right, international collaborations, revenues getting through projects, right. So, there could be a number of activities through which you are going to realize these goals. Now, in order to realize this, you need to develop your strategy, that how to go about it, achieving these goals, so that you will be able to realize your vision, right. So, vision must be related to the mission, and then mission is linked with the goals and objectives of the organization. It is also related to the marketing strategies, right. How? Because you also need to identify where you want to stand in the market. If you remember, yesterday I was giving an example that an organization wants to achieve a certain percent of market, right. So, the moment you say that you want to achieve say 25% share in the market, it means you have to identify that how do you achieve that target, right. So, in order to achieve your target, you look into your product, you look into your markets, you look into your customers, you look into your technology, and with the help of this, how we are going to achieve those targets. It means that you need to identify how the company will be able to grow and compete in order to ensure that they are able to realize their vision, right, and that is how we also related with the strategy, right. So, what we can say that a meaningful vision is a description with which people are able to relate themselves. They can imagine that yes, this is going to help us to realize our goals and objectives. From vision statement, we also derive our mission and goals, and this leads to developing certain strategies which help us to reach the goals and objectives of the organization, and that is how you will be able to achieve your vision and mission. Now, when we are talking about the content of meaningful vision, we also need to look into some other issues, the context. Context is very, very important, because the context talk about certain things with which you relate with the content, right. Say for example, if you look at an academic institution, so you need to identify the environment in which it is working and how it is coping with the environmental factors, right. So, any organization has certain context, and they must keep in mind the context while developing a meaningful vision for that particular organization, right. So, you need to look at the context, the environment, the situation and the other contingencies which is going to decide what would be your vision. But if without looking into the context, if you are going to identify your vision, then it may not be good, right. So, you must identify the context in which you are going to write your vision statement, right. So, here the authors have identified certain contexts specifically related to the organization, which is going to help them to produce change, which could be called visionary. Visionary change means the change which is going to be very, very radical and transformational. So, for example, say rigid organizations. What kind of organizations could be called rigid organizations? Those organizations which does not have enough resources, okay, and then they lack the need for the changes. If you are an organization with limited resources and you do not want to go for a change, or you lack the need of the for change, then probably the kind of vision that you develop would be very, very limited. It is not going to be a very meaningful vision, because you do not realize what exactly you want to achieve or where you want to go in future. Okay. So, it would be very difficult for these kind of organizations to develop a very effective vision for themselves, which could be considered as meaningful in nature. Now, another type of organizations are known as bold organizations. What kind of organizations are bold organizations? Bold organizations are those who are really inspirational, motivation, and they are ready to take risk. In spite of having limited resources, they are moving ahead and they think that yes, they need to go for a change. Some of the startup organizations could be put into this category. Those who have been successful, those say for example, with one product, with limited manpower, limited resources, they try to take risk and try to see that how they can grow and develop themselves, right. So, they try to realize that okay, if we are here, then tomorrow we need to be there. Okay. So, suppose they say that okay, our earning is a 500 crore rupees or 5 crore rupees today, then maybe down the line 2 years we need to earn 200 crore rupees, right. So, accordingly they try to take risk and see that what kind of activities they need to take. So, they develop a vision for the future based not only based on their resources, but their readiness to take risks, their motivation, their inspiration, and these kind of organizations would be able to develop a vision, and if they are able to realize, they would be called bold organizations. Okay. Though there is risk, some element of risk that is involved in for such organizations, but only these kind of organizations are going to be successful, those who are ready to risk. If you are not able to take risk and you do not want to go for a change, then irrespective of the kind of vision that you have developed, it is not going to happen. Then the third kind of organization is those kind of organizations which have enough resources. Okay. But what happens in these kind of organizations, right? They have lot of fat. Okay. So, they keep on absorbing their fats and they do not want to go for a change. They think that yes, they need to maintain their status quo. Okay. So, these kind of organizations also do not have a vision which could be called futuristic, which is going to provide them any direction where they need to go. But what happens, maybe they could go for short term wins, but in the long term they are not going to be very, very successful, right. Because even if you are having enough resources, you are able to manage your organizations very well. If you do not have a long term direction and future for your organization, then what will happen, right. So, these kind of organizations are known as over managed organizations. Next into the line is liberated organizations. These are the best category of organizations, because they not only have resources, but they are also ready to go for risks, right. You will find that some organizations can be put into this category, who are always ready to take risks, and for that they have enough resources, okay, and they go for certain vision which they would be able to realize in the future. And that is why you will find that in many segments you will have some examples where having good resources has actually helped them to realize their goals and objectives, right. Even some Indian MNCs, say for example, you can say Patanjali, which could be put into the bold organizations. To start with, they had very low resources, but they wanted to go for a change, and then they have been succeeded. Say for example, if you look at say Reliance, right. Reliance is not lacking any kind of resources, but they are also ready to go for a change. Say Amazon, having resources, but going for lot of changes, right. So, they have diversified and they have realized their vision that what they need to go in different fields, right. So, what I am trying to explain here, that the context of the organization is very, very important. Depending upon the environment and situation, whether despite having resources or not, whether you are able to go take risk, whether you want to go for change or not, and if you do not want to go for a change, then even if you are having enough resources, long term future would be at stake. Say Hindustan Motors, one example that I can give. Being an over managed organization, it is not able to survive. Say in HMT, right, despite having resources, they did not go for a change, and that is what we all know that what happened to HMT today. So, what is very, very important is that when you are trying to develop a vision for your organization, you must take the context into consideration, because the context is a trigger which alerts people to go for a change, okay. And then vision is something that is not developed for a short term period, okay. So, you are going to develop a vision depending upon what exactly you want to achieve, and accordingly you also go for changing your vision. And when you go for a change in your vision, then you need to see that what you need to do in terms of mission, goals and strategies, okay, and whether it is possible for you to realize them or not. Another important factor is culture, especially the culture of the organization is one thing which we call organizational culture, but another important factor is the national culture. The culture provides a context, whether people are ready to take risk, whether people are really motivated enough. You will find that some cultures people are not willing to take risks, they have less need for achievement. Okay. So, these factors are very, very important, and that is going to decide whether you are considering these factors while going for a risk, whether you really go for a change or not, and that is how we can say okay, depending upon the resource, the culture, the risk, these are the factors which act as a context and which is going to decide the kind of vision that you want to develop for the future. So, another important factor is the which you call the trigger is, as I told you, the environment, the economic environment and the technology, right. So, your vision is also going to be affected by the economic factors and the technical factors, right. So, you need to decide about, depending upon the economic factors, whether you should go for a change in your vision or not, right. Economic factors, then external factors. So, you also need to look at the economic factors in terms of growth, development, GDP, economic policy, right, the purchasing power. So, there could be a lot of factors, and if you find that these factors are not favorable, then bringing about a change is very important, because if you do not bring a change, it means that calls for a new vision. So, you need to ensure that how, despite having economic turbulence, you are going to compete and survive, and for that you need to go for a change. Similarly, technology is another important factor, especially in certain sectors. If you do not improve and modify and bring about a change in your technology through innovations in your product and services, then it may not be possible for you to compete, right. So, technology become another trigger to go for a change. You know that product life cycle is being shortened, okay, for a lot of products, especially if you look at some of the products related to the communication and mobile technologies. Okay. So, every 6 months, 7 months, the new technology is coming up. So, which acts as a trigger for most of the companies to move ahead and go for a new technology, so that you are able to compete. So, if you are developing your vision and if you are not taking these factors into consideration, you will not be able to develop yourself or compete even yourself, right. So, that is why these economic factors and the new technology or the technical factors become very important, right. And then you need to consider economic factor, cultural factor, technical factors, right, because these are the external triggers. Then you also need to look at internal triggers, whether a company is ready to take risk, whether people have high need for achievement, right, how you are going to optimize or use your resources. These are the internal factors. So, both the internal context and the external context is going to decide the kind of vision we are going to develop, and whether this vision is going to be very useful for you to provide you direction for the future or not. So, what we have discussed now is the content and the context, which is going to affect the vision and its development. Now, what we are going to discuss is that how we develop vision and how the vision emerges. Since the content and the context is very important, so what we are going to discuss is various approaches which actually help us to develop a vision. So, here some of the things that could be asked is that okay, whether it is coming from top or not, who is going to craft the vision, okay, whether it is leader dominated, thumb priming, whether somebody who is going to prime it, okay, so somebody is going to push it or facilitate this. Okay. So, when you are going to craft a vision for your organization, the need is coming from where for developing a vision for the organization. This could be leader dominated, means coming from the top management, or everybody is thinking about it, or there are some change managers who is going to facilitate this process to create a vision for the organization, or even if you have a vision and you know that this vision is not helping you to reach the desired future, then you go for creating a new vision. Okay. So, whether you go for creating a new vision for the organization, provided you do not have, or you want to go for a change in your vision, existing vision, okay, you need to ensure the source of this, from where it is coming up, and then you ask number of questions, right, when you are going to develop a vision, right. These questions could be intuitive in nature, okay, or analytical, or benchmarking. Benchmarking means that you use a standard approach, you look at how others have developed the vision, and accordingly you try to develop vision for your organization, which could be looking very similar. You remember when we were talking about vision and mission, and I had given certain examples. Okay, some of them were very generic in nature, which could be applied to other organizations. Maybe that they have followed a process which could be called a benchmarking process, right. They try to standardize their vision, which could be looking very, very similar with each other, but you need to develop a vision which is going to be very, very distinct and specific pertaining to your organization. Okay. So, you need to use some kind of intuition, judgment and expertise, and then you try to analyze the context, also look at the standards or the benchmark, and then accordingly you try to develop a vision for your organization. So, what I would suggest that yes, use your judgment, expertise and intuition, that is very, very important. Analyze the context, that is very, very important. Look at the context in which the organization is operating, and this context include both internal and external context, and then you look at the benchmarks, how other organizations or similar organizations have developed their vision, if it is possible for you to find it out, and then use a combination of all these three to ensure that you develop a vision which is going to be very, very meaningful, very, very distinct and specific pertaining to your organization. And then you say that yes, this vision is basically talking about the kind of organization that you have, right. It must relate to the organization, its values and beliefs, right, for which the organization has been established. Say for example, when IITs were established in 50s and 60s, right, the basic idea of these institutions was what? To produce technocrats who could build roads, right, dams and create infrastructure for the country, right. So, that was the kind of value and belief with which the managers, national managers or the top leaders of this country had in their mind when they tried to establish these kind of institutions. So, that was the vision at that particular point of time, because we were lacking these kind of things and then we need to develop ourselves as a country. So, these kind of vision were visualized by the top managers or the leader, right. So, you need to ensure that it must be aligned the kind of activities that you do, depends upon the kind of field that you are operating in, whether you are in IT, services, hospitality, academic institutions. So, you must ensure that it follows the underlying values and beliefs that is held within the organization for which you exist, right. It must be related to that one. If it is not, then probably your vision is not going to be very, very meaningful. So, it is very, very important to ensure that when you are going to craft a vision, find out the source, see that how it can be developed. You need to also understand that you look at the attributes of a good vision and ensure that your vision is something that is meaningful, it has a context, right, and it is related to the values and beliefs for which the organization exists. That is very, very important, and that is how the vision comes out from the various sources. Look at this, how it evolves in an organization. Now, if you look at this, you can see that the periphery we have stakeholders, right. Stakeholders include community society to which you are going to offer products and services. It could be suppliers and vendors, right. So, there could be lot of stakeholders, institutions which have invested money, right. So, all of them are stakeholders which expect certain thing from the organization. That the next level you have incumbents, okay, who are working for the organization, and then you have the core leadership team, right. So, which process you adopt, whether it is leadership dominated or whether it is from the top, right. So, it is always good that when you are trying to develop a vision, you start with the top leadership. The core leadership team is going to decide about the kind of vision that you are going to have, which is going to be meaningful, okay, and depending upon the context in which it is operated, right. So, the core leadership team is responsible for developing the vision, right, because this leadership team understands the market, the product, the customers and the technology, because they are basically responsible for the growth and development of the organization, right. So, this core leadership once decides or develop the vision, then they communicate it to the incumbents, the employees and other people, right, those who are working for this organization. So, once it is communicated, and then they get feedback from the incumbents, role incumbents including employees, right. So, based on their feedback, then they again look at it whether the vision that which is developed by them is correct or not, or whether there is a need to modify this vision or not. And then this vision is communicated to other stakeholders, so that they know what kind of organization you are, why you exist, what you do, right. And then based on the feedback from the stakeholders, it gets further evolved, so that you are able to identify the kind of vision that you are going to have, right. So, that is how vision evolves. So, here we have adopted a approach, crafted the leadership approach, where the leadership is going to define the vision, and based on the feedback from the incumbents and other stakeholders, they are going to refine it further to see that how it comes up, right. Moving further, we are going to talk about how we communicate a powerful vision for the change, because ultimately vision need to be related or linked with the change, right. So, creating, defining and communicating the vision for transformation is not a simple process, it is a very complex process, right, and it requires time and resources. So, when you are going to communicate a vision which you say is going to be powerful, specifically related with the change, what you call the transformational change, it is very, very important to ensure that you follow these principles like simplicity. Okay. The change vision must come in many forms, and you must be able to communicate it both in short and long form. It means that the language that you are going to use to write the vision statement, okay, it must be simple, it should be and it should be able to communicate people down the line what is expected from them. Then it must be authentic, authentic in the sense that who has developed this, it means it has come from the leadership, having a good track record and a culture based on trust and accountability. So, that the vision appears to be more authentic in the sense that it has a content, it is going to be powerful and it has a meaning. Then this vision is communicated through various channels, multi channels. So, you need to communicate it down the line to your not only the employees, but also all the stakeholders with all the possible means, right. So, communicating the change vision is very, very important, because if you are not able to communicate, then people may not be imbibe that, right. So, it is very, very important to see that whatever means are available for communicating both hard and soft, it must be communicated, right. But at the same time, do not go for over communication, right. Then if you go for over communication, if it is not aligned with the kind of channel that you are using, then it is going to be detrimental. People may get fed up, people might get irritated, right. For example, when you see advertisement a number of times, it might be, look disturbing or irritating to you. So, make sure that when you are going to communicate this change, especially related to the vision, then you ensure that the way it is communicated has an impact on the people. Then repetition, yes, use the channels and every opportunity to distill and communicate important information when you are developing this, so that people know that how this vision has been developed, right. So, sometimes you need to repeat the same thing time and again through various channels to instill that okay, this is what we need to do, and then make sure that your behavior is consistent. It means the top management must ensure that their behavior is consistent. It means that they are going to behave in a more reliable manner. What does it mean? It means that whatever vision they have developed, it must be aligned with their mission, goals and objectives at the same time, and they are not going to talk about number of things related to the vision. So, once the vision is developed, they are going to talk about that vision only, they are not going to change even it also. That is very, very important, and they must get feedback. Feedback should be gathered while you are going to develop a new change vision for your organization, right. And throughout the process, through your employees and other stakeholders, you try to ensure that the vision that you have developed, it is communicated to the people down the line, and it is so powerful, having a content and context, that it has a intended effect. So, after discussing the principles of communicating a vision, then what happens, that vision is not able to work, it does not align itself with the goals and objectives. Okay. So, there could be a number of reasons because of which it could fail, like if it is very specific, right, it is not clear, it is not adequate, it does not actually complete or does not have all the attributes of a vision, right. If it is unrealistic, right, I think some of the points we have already talked about. Unrealistic says, suppose you say that okay, you want to be the best organization, okay, you want to be in top Fortune 1000 or Fortune 500 and you are nowhere right now. So, it looks very unrealistic on your part to talk about such a vision which is not possible to achieve, right, and make sure that your vision is something that is not static, it is dynamic. Dynamic in the sense that you are able to change this depending upon the context. If the context changes, then you should also be able to create a vision, a new vision for a change which is aligned with your content and the context both, right. So, you need to develop a very powerful vision, okay, which is going to be communicated to the people, okay, and which is linked with the organizational activities. So, that people understand the kind of vision for which they are working. So, you need to ensure that it is not it should be clear, it should be adequate enough to communicate something that is going to be meaningful and it is feasible and realistic. If it is not, then the vision is not going to help you to realize your goals and objectives. You can have any kind of vision, but it does not mean that you are going to achieve the goals and objectives related to that vision. Okay. And then the vision statements become decoratory. Okay. It might be hanging on your wall, but it does not serve the purpose for which it has been established. Now, when it comes to linking vision with the change, okay, there are a lot of debates that have been there. Okay. Now, the first question is that whether vision drives change or emerges during the change, right. Second is whether vision helps or hinders the changes, and the third is whether vision is an attribute of heroic leaders, top leaders who are ready to take risk, or bold organizations, heroic organizations. So, we will take up each of these points. So, to start with, we will talk about whether vision drives change or emerges during the change. Both are possible, because vision helps you to realize your goals and objectives, right. So, you have set up your goal as your vision for the future. So, it might drive you to go for certain changes, okay, to realize your vision, or sometimes vision also emerges during the change, right. If the context is changing, then you also need to go for a change of your vision. Okay. Another important point is whether vision help or hinder the changes. It always helps in the change, because vision is something that is related to the future and change is also about the future, and you know that future is uncertain. So, if you take adequate precautions and you follow all the processes properly, starting with need to identify change to implementing the change, I mean all the steps that we have been talking about properly, then it facilitates, otherwise not. Yes, it could be attribute of heroic leaders as well as heroic organizations also. So, let us discuss these points. The first point, vision drives change. Yes, without a vision, change is not possible, right, because it produces a clarity of goals. Okay, this is what we need to achieve. So, the moment we say that we need to achieve 20% market share, so it talks about okay, well, this is what we need to achieve, right. So, it also talks about the extent of the change, how much you need to change in order to achieve that market share, right, and that also gives you a strategic intent. Okay, this is what we need to achieve and how we are going to achieve it. So, how we are going to achieve it is basically the strategic intent, right. So, that is about the vision drives change. The second point that we talked about is, if you look at this, yes, vision is a critical driver. How? It provides future direction, right, how the consumers are going to benefit out of it, whether it is realistic or not, whether it is going to motivate people or not, whether you are able to communicate it or not, and whether it is consistently followed or measured by people or not. And if you follow all this, then you can say yes. If you want to really succeed in the long term, so you need a vision, okay, and this vision is going to tell you how you are going to change, because vision talks about the future, okay, and without a vision you do not know where you need to go, and then you do not know what are the activities that you need to perform in order to succeed in the future, right. So, it is always good to have a vision, okay, because it helps us to motivate, it also provides a direction, right, all kind of things. Then The second point that I have been talking about is whether vision emerges during the change or not. Okay. Sometimes you are not able to articulate a clear vision for an organization, especially when you start an organization, because you are not clear what exactly you are going to do. You have some idea about the organization, but once the organization evolves, the vision also comes out. Especially for new organizations, the vision emerges during the change, because when you are going to develop a vision, especially for new organizations, you do not have enough information for it. What kind of activities you are going to take up in the future, it depends on a lot of factors. How your organization is going to develop and evolve in the future, that is also not clear, right. So, as you grow and develop as an organization, accordingly you also think about the vision, and then vision keep on changing for this kind of organization, and that is why vision is something that is very, very dynamic in nature, right. And in the beginning actually it may not be important, because you have just started something. So, for that strategies, plans are more important instead of having a vision for the organization, right. So, for new organizations definitely vision emerges as they grow and develop, as they evolve, and that is why this statement can be correct, that yes, vision emerges during the change. But vision also helps in the change. How? Those companies which have a vision, they have a enhanced preference, okay, they know what they are going to do. Okay. It also provides a roadmap to the organization, a direction, right. It also gives an idea about the future, which is going to be motivating in nature. Okay. It can be used as a recruitment tool, because you are going to say hire such people whose goals or objectives are more aligned to your vision statement, right. And it can also be used as a decision making tool. You are going to take decisions based on what you intend to achieve in the near future, right. Then you also able to articulate the gap between your current and future. Okay, this is what where we are and this is where we not want to go, right. And this gap is basically filled by creating means to leverage the resources. So, you use your resources to see that how you can achieve it. So, these are the activities through which can be done. Flanking, where you are going to exploit weaknesses of your competitors. Encircling, you gain more control of the market, right, by say acquiring resources, that is very, very important. And the third one, destabilizing. Okay. You change the rules, competitive rules, right. For example, Reliance Jio changed the rules, competitive rules, right, and then others had to follow, right. And that is how you are going to leverage your resources by changing the rule of the game, right. For example, in the beginning when one airline started low price airline, then others also followed the suit, right. So, there could be lot of strategies that could be done through which you are going to leverage your resources. So, basically in the process you go for a change, that where you are and where you want to go and how it is going to happen. Then it may hinder change if it is not meaningful, it does not have a context. If it is not future centric, if it is present centric, then it is not good, and then it would create some kind of delusion among the people. It looks more fluffy in the sense, okay, from outside it looks good and very decorative, but inside it is not that so, right. And then you see that it is not compatible with the values, and that is why I say that the strategic vision must be related with the values and beliefs for which the organization is working. This is very, very important. And if you do not have very clear boundaries, then it is very difficult for you to have this kind of vision. Then the last point is whether you are going for heroic leaders or organizations, right. So, vision is an attribute of heroic leaders, because any kind of strategic change will happen only if the organization or the top management is able to decide about it and take risk that, okay, we want to go for a change, right. And in that case it must be clear, compelling, challenging and credible, in the sense that it must be meaningful, the content must be meaningful, and then how it is going to be articulated by the management, it depends upon that, whether the vision is very, very strategic, it is meaningful or not, and whether you are able to envision your future as an organization through this vision or not, that is very, very important. Coming to the next point, that is what are the activities that is taken up. So, these are the activities which is taken by the heroic leaders or organizations that is framing, right, how you manage your followers, so that they are able to follow it, are they able to interpret it, scripting, how you write it, right. Now, staging, the kind of symbols, artifacts, settings that you use to reinforce your vision, and performing, enacting the vision. It means that you work on to ensure that the vision is achieved, right. So, in that case it is an attribute of heroic organizations. It means it is a company which is very visionary, which is always looks for the future, right. The example that I had given of Amazon, because if you look at Amazon, it is a very visionary company, because they have been diversifying into different fields, not only selling products online, but they are gone into say IT sector, right, website development, film making, right. So, they have diversified, means they have taken lot of courage and risk to see that what needs to be done, okay, and they have tried to see that the kind of opportunities that is available, and that is why this kind of organizations could be called heroic organizations. And they have a core ideology with which they are working, that okay, they need to succeed in whatever field they want to get into, right. So, these kind of organizations could be called as heroic organizations, and the kind of vision that they are going to develop will definitely be more meaningful for them, and then they need to ensure that people are able to align and realize them very well. Okay. So, what we have talked about here is that how we can link vision and mission with the change process. Thank you very much.